Of the many dark acolytes to serve Count Dooku during the Clone Wars, none were as feared as Asajj Ventress. She was Dooku's protege and personal assassin, a warrior fearsome enough to slay Jedi Masters, hate-filled, efficient, and strong in the dark side. But Ventress is a surprisingly layered character and had been even before Star Wars The Clone Wars retconned part of her story. Though Ventress served the dark side, she'd been trained as a Jedi, and on some level, she actually still saw herself as one. Ventress believed herself a true Jedi, in contrast to the false Jedi she believed dominated the Jedi Order, the ones who had failed her and her master. In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at the tragedy of Asajj Ventress, how the Order had failed her, and how her story originally ended.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Before we begin, we're going to discuss the sources we'll be using in this video. Today, we're going to be discussing the original legend story of Asajj Ventress, and we'll be primarily drawing on and quoting from the Star Wars Republic and Star Wars Obsession comic lines, as well as the novel Yoda Dark Rendezvous by Sean Stewart. As always, we recommend that you buy these works yourself and support their authors. We also need to make a few quick notes on continuity. While many fans believe that Asajj Ventress was created for Star Wars The Clone Wars, she was actually created for the original 2002 to 2005 Clone Wars multimedia project. She first appeared in the one-off comic Jedi Mace Windu, and she appeared in many of the other Clone Wars stories coming out of that time as well. Over the course of the multimedia project, Ventress was given a full story and character arc, which ended in the 5-issue comic series Star Wars Obsession, which brought her story to an end. Star Wars The Clone Wars later appropriated the character, and regrettably, the show's later seasons retconned the final chapters of Ventress's original arc. This video is primarily about Ventress's original character arc, though this analysis does still apply well to Ventress as presented in the Clone Wars, so we're going to talk about those retcon bits anyway. We will, however, make note of which parts have and haven't been overridden by the Clone Wars for the sake of clarity. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. 3 months into the Clone Wars, on a mission to Omadun, one of the moons of Naboo, a strike team of 4 Jedi was attacked by 2 of the CIS's newest commanders. One was Dirge, a psychotic, bloodthirsty, nigh unkillable Jedi bounty hunter. The Jedi were already aware of him, not that it helped the Omadun strike team much, but the other was completely unknown to Republic intelligence. A bald, lithe, lightsaber-wielding warrior strong in the dark side. She'd introduced herself to the Jedi by beheading one of the leaders of the strike team and slicing off his Padawan's arm, and she battled with Obi-Wan Kenobi to a draw, only retreating when Anakin Skywalker and Alpha 17 came to the rescue. Her name, the Jedi learned, was Asajj Ventress, and this battle between her and the Jedi would not be the last. As the Clone Wars went on, Ventress would achieve notoriety as a prolific Jedi hunter and a formidable commander, leading CIS forces to victory in many battles. She killed at least 18 Jedi over the course of the war, and she became one of Count Dooku's most trusted servants, an assassin he could entrust the most critical missions to. She clashed with Jedi at Kieta, Munilinst, Yavin 4, Ord Cestus, and Findar, and in every encounter, it was clear that she nursed a deep hatred for the Jedi Order. But despite this, in many of these early encounters, the Jedi that faced Ventress noticed an odd quirk of hers. She made a point of referring to them as False Jedi. The meaning of this quickly became evident. Ventress saw her enemies as pretenders to the Jedi Order, and she saw herself as a Jedi Master. This quirk went away over the course of the Clone Wars, but the mentality behind it did not. Even as Ventress adopted the revulsion with which most of her fellow Dark Acolytes spoke the word Jedi, and even as she traveled further and further down the path of the dark side, her understanding of herself didn't change. Even after she abandoned the title of Jedi, Asajj Ventress still thought of herself as a warrior whose command of the Force allowed her to right wrongs and do what needed to be done, to enforce her vision of justice upon the galaxy. Obviously, Ventress's perspective was warped, but the origin of this belief was a mystery to the Jedi at first. It was only after Obi-Wan Kenobi was captured by Ventress and brought to her citadel on remote Rattatak that the truth came to light. There, After escaping Ventress's dungeons, Kenobi encountered Osika Kurske, a prisoner who had once been a Rattataki warlord, who told him the story of Ventress's origins as relayed in Star Wars Republic issue 60. Rattatak is a world of warriors and soldiers. For aeons, we have battled one another for the right to rule. We knew nothing of the outside galaxy or your republic, but still found new and inventive ways to kill one another. All my life, I had only known victory and war. I'd conquered many cities and killed many of my rivals, but there were many other warlords who struggled for power, including Ventress's parents. They assembled a massive army in the southern hemisphere. I killed her parents before they could become a real threat. Only the girl, Asajj, escaped. Soon after, a warlock fell out of the sky. He claimed to be an emissary from another world, your republic. So of course, we tried to kill him. On her own, Asajj would have died. Left to his own devices, the stranger would have undoubtedly been captured and killed. But together, they became something our world had never known. They became heroes. They ended wars and united armies, and as their legend grew, we heard stories of the girl using strange powers. She could move things with her mind and control the thoughts of her enemies, it was said. So I convinced the other warlords and generals to join forces, at least long enough to kill Ventress and her mentor. We completed only half of our plan. After her mentor's death, Ventress assembled an army. She learned new tricks from other off-worlders. She waged war on us all. She killed or captured all who would oppose her. Fans of Star Wars: The Clone Wars might find elements of this backstory familiar, as it was later adopted with some retcons into the Season 3 episode Night Sisters. But the core of this story remained the same. Asajj Ventress had been orphaned and then adopted by the stranded Jedi Kai Narek, who took Ventress as his apprentice, trained her in the ways of the Jedi, and set out to bring an end to Rattatak's endless wars. But Narek had been killed by Kursk and the 12 warlords who had allied with him, and his death drove Ventress down the path of the dark side. She sought revenge against the warlords who had killed her master, and in the process of exacting it, she changed Rattatak forever. Ventress's adopted homeworld was a barren, rocky world unsuitable for agriculture and resource poor. Despite this, it had 3 indigenous sentient species and vast populations of non-Rattataki, some from the Republic and some from the unknown regions, whose ancestors had crashed on the planet and found themselves unable to leave. There weren't enough resources to go around, and so the dawn of civilization on Rattatak had seen the planet's peoples gather into tribes and battle each other for control of what little the planet had to offer. As Rattatak had no contact with the outside galaxy, there was no escape from this cycle and no hope of relief from trade with the galaxy. All told, Rattatak was a terrible place for a child to grow up, especially an orphan, but Ventress had survived her traumatic childhood, and Kai Narek had instilled within her a desire to bring an end to the daily horrors of Rattataki life. As Narek's apprentice, Ventress's goals were lofty but noble, to end the endless wars and bring peace to Rattatak. But when Kai Narek was killed and Ventress was orphaned once again, she fell to the dark side, utterly consumed by grief, anger, and, above all else, hatred. In the absence of Kai Narek's influence, the dark side twisted her desire for peace into a desire for revenge against the warlords that had killed her master, and Asajj Ventress swore an oath that she would not rest until the 12 warlords that had joined Kursk's conspiracy were dead. She made good on this oath, killing the warlords one by one, adding a tattoo to her bald head for each one she slew. The dark side made Ventress into an unstoppable opponent, a living weapon, hatred given form, and there were none on Rattatak who could stand against her. Her armies conquered the entire planet, and in the end, all of Ventress's enemies perished, all except Osika Kursk, whom Ventress had captured and imprisoned in her dungeons. Kursk theorized that she needed him alive so that she still had someone to hate and thus fuel her connection to the dark side. When all was said and done, Asajj Ventress became the queen of a blood-soaked world, the unquestioned ruler of Rattatak. In a twisted way, she fulfilled her and her master's dream of bringing peace to the planet. Once there was no one left to oppose Ventress, Rattatak's wars finally ended. With her judgment clouded by the dark side, however, Ventress became a brutal ruler, totalitarian and pitiless. But at the same time, She brought some form of peace to the planet for the first time, and her people practically worshipped her for it, building Ventress a massive castle at the heart of the new planetary capital. The Rattatak saw her as a savior, the heroic Jedi Knight Ventress herself believed she had become. Ventress's rule over Rattatak isn't mentioned often in Star Wars media, but it's perhaps the most interesting part of her story. It's one of many indications that, though Ventress had been warped by the dark side, she wasn't completely consumed by it. The dark side had made her bloodthirsty, pitiless, and sadistic, and it had corrupted her goals and self-image, but it was never quite able to corrupt her completely. Even after falling to the dark side, Ventress maintained her goal of bringing peace to Rattatak, and despite her brutality, she became the best ruler Rattatak had ever seen, beloved by her people and for good reason. She even continued to honor the memory of Narrattak, her fallen master, building a statue of him in her castle and holding onto his lightsaber, and on some level, she continued to cling to elements of the Jedi ideal, even when, as we'll see later, she came to believe that there was no such thing as good or evil. Many people started down the path of the dark side in the same way Ventress had. With noble goals, the dark side steadily corrupted into something evil. But in most cases, the path of the dark side caused darksiders to quickly forget the goals that had set them down the dark path in the first place, corrupting them until they only cared about the pursuit of power. But Ventress was different. She might actually have been the only darksider in the known history of the Star Wars galaxy to actually fulfill her original goals in some fashion even after her fall. Even as the dark side warped her into something evil, even as it destroyed her values and made her into what she had once fought against, it was never able to eliminate or even fully corrupt her love for Narrattak or her desire to live up to him. Because of this, Ventress held on to her identity as a Jedi, believing that she had only done what she needed to bring peace to Rattatak. Despite this, however, Ventress came to resent the Jedi Order after her fall to the dark side. She believed that the Jedi had abandoned Narrattak, leaving him to die on Rattatak, and that by proxy, they had abandoned her as well. Ventress believed the Jedi had failed her. They had failed to save her master and failed to save her from being orphaned a second time. Her dislike of the Jedi only grew after she met Count Dooku, through whom she became acquainted with what other Jedi were like. She came to see them as cowards who didn't truly live up to the Jedi ideal, as she said to Obi-Wan all the way back on Omar Dun in Republic Issue 51. I emerged from misery and suffering only to find the Jedi I had once worshipped are nothing but weak, misguided fools. Part of Ventress's disdain for the so-called False Jedi was the bitterness over the death of Narrattak, but much of it was ideological in nature. Ventress's opinion of what being a Jedi truly meant was largely self-informed. She learned the basics from Narrattak, but with his premature death, her understanding of the Jedi Code was left incomplete, and she filled in the blanks herself. This was why she kept considering herself a Jedi after falling to the dark side. She didn't have the perspective to understand that she'd fallen to the dark side in the first place. As she understood it, what the False Jedi called the dark side was just another aspect of the Force, and the crime she'd committed in her campaign against the warlords was just doing what needed to be done to ensure peace. When Ventress learned that the Jedi Order rejected the dark side and that a Jedi would never have gone to the lengths she had to avenge her master, she was disgusted by it. Ventress refused to accept that the dark side was evil rather than just one of many aspects of the Force. After all, the dark passions and violence that fueled the dark side were facts of life on Rattatak, and as she saw it, they had made her strong. She instead condemned those who avoided using the dark side as cowards, afraid to unleash their full potential, surrendering to weakness in the name of archaic moral codes. And this cowardice, in Ventress's eyes, it didn't just limit Jedi on a personal level, it prevented them from doing what needed to be done, and the galaxy, Ventress believed, was worse off for it. Not that Ventress cared all that much about the galaxy. While she had refused to give up on bringing peace to Rattatak, she had never been concerned with the outside galaxy, and as the dark side's hold on her strengthened in her time serving Dooku, Ventress couldn't care less about the people of the galaxy as a whole. Instead, what she sought was revenge against the Jedi for abandoning her master, as well as greater power for herself, which she hoped to gain by learning the ways of the Sith from Dooku. During the Clone Wars, the dark side did ultimately force Ventress onto the same path it forced all its adherents, albeit more slowly than most, But even as it did so, Ventress's personal convictions about the Force and the dark side in particular didn't really change. Ventress summed up this understanding of the dark side to the Padawan Scout and Wee Malaru at Findar Spaceport, after killing their masters right in front of them, as described in Yoda, Dark Rendezvous. "Let me tell you about the dark side," Ventress said quietly. "Typical Jedi propaganda, to name it so. Let me give it another name," she said. "Let's call it the truth." She paused to study Master Liam's body with something like sadness. "The truth is, you do care that this one is dead. You should. The truth is, you would be less than alive if you didn't. The truth is, the principles that seem right to an 800-odd-year-old hypocrite who may live forever make no sense for the rest of us who live and suffer and die in this world. Our time here is so short, so precious, so sweet. To turn your back on it, to crawl into your monastery and teach yourself not to feel, what a waste," Ventress said. Her voice shook. "What a blasphemy. If the universe loves the good, as the Jedi would have you believe, if the morality of the weak indeed governs the dance of the stars, if life is fair, why then am I alive, while your master lies dead? The truth is, there is no good and no evil either," she said with a wan smile. "There's only life, or not. The powerful always trick the simple with the promise of power. That's the easiest way to bring someone to see the dark side. Give in to your anger. It's a simple trick, and an effective one because it works. When people stop denying what they have always known in their hearts is true, when they come to some degree into their own power. But that isn't the end of their journey," Ventress said. "It's the beginning. That despair. That furious instant when your eyes open and you see the world for what it really is. A necessary first step. That's all." To Asajj Ventress, who had known nothing but war all her life, Jedi concepts of good or evil seemed alien and contrived. On Rattatak, there was only strength and weakness. Those who did what they had to survive and those who perished. The dark side, to Ventress, was just another survival tool, if the most potent one of all, and the moral arguments against its use were just sophistry that had no place in the real world, where the strong survived and the weak perished. Obviously, this sort of view is narrow to say the least, but to be fair to Ventress, that sort of world was all she had ever known. It's hard to blame her for not being unable to see that there was more to the universe when she'd never seen it. This view led right into one of the core ideological tenets of the Sith, that those strong in the Force should use their power however they wanted, and anyone who said otherwise was only trying to control them. As the long history of the Sith shows, such beliefs, as well as the cult of strength ideology they come from, lead to their adherents committing unspeakable evils, and this was certainly true for Ventress. After all, she gave the above speech after carrying out 2 brutal murders. But despite that, this encounter also shows the other side of Asajj Ventress. Because even after killing their masters in cold blood, and despite having the Padawans at her mercy, she didn't kill Wee and Scout. Instead, she seemed genuinely intent on converting them, or at least getting them to understand her side of things. Her parting words to the 2 Padawans explained why. "Behold, I give you the gift of life. Hate me, if you like. By all means, hate this," she said, glancing at the bodies of the 2 Jedi. "You should. I give you the gift of my own heartbreak. If you learn from it, if you can face the emptiness of the universe, then you have some chance of growing up." In a sense, it seems Ventress saw herself in the 2 orphaned Padawans, particularly in Wee. Like her, they had been taken from their original families, and like her, they had now had their masters taken from them as well. She seems to have believed that the pain of this loss gave the Padawans the same opportunity it had given her. The opportunity to, from Ventress's perspective, break the chains of the Jedi Code and become strong. To come into their own on the dark side. Ventress believed genuinely that she was doing the 2 Padawans a favor, and even though she kept a fairly detached, somewhat sociopathic demeanor throughout the conversation, she gave the impression that she wanted them to embrace the dark side for their own sake. In a twisted sense, Ventress is expressing some sort of compassion here, though she'd never admit to feeling such a thing. But with that said, the dark side steadily deadened its users to those sorts of feelings, compelling them to solely seek power for its own sake, and though Ventress progressed slowly down the path of the dark side, she wasn't immune to this effect. After Dooku recruited her to be his assassin in the early months of the Clone Wars, Ventress's ambition and hunger for power grew, and her growing fascination with the ways of the Sith started to kill what remained of Ventress's self-identification with the Jedi. She sought to become Dooku's Sith apprentice rather than just an acolyte, and as her ambition grew, she didn't shy away from expressing it either. Yoda: A Dark Rendezvous shows this as well, as Ventress repeatedly asks Dooku to make her his apprentice. It showed that she certainly had potential for such a role. Even though Ventress could be blinded by her extreme hatred at times, she was also cunning, relentless, and a skilled manipulator. In many respects, she might have made a better Sith apprentice than Darth Maul. Dark Rendezvous shows this clearly in one particular exchange between Ventress and Dooku, after Ventress's botched mission to Findar Spaceport. The conversation starts with Dooku chewing Ventress out, and Ventress quickly realizes that he's on the verge of having her killed for her failure. But she manages to turn the tables on him, completely redirecting the conversation and saving herself by instilling doubt in her own master. In every fiber of her being, Asajj knew that running, hiding, defending was always the wrong strategy. In every engagement, one had to seize the initiative. In every engagement, the key was to attack. "Kill your master," she said. Dooku blinked. "What?" "Kill your master now, with my help. Now, while you can." She noted the tiniest flinch on the Count's face. Sooner or later, every Sith apprentice tries to overthrow his master. I know it, you know it, he knows it. Now is your time. You're an independent agent on a fortress planet. Armies are at your command. The wealth of worlds is at your feet. Now is your time. "How do you think this war is going to go?" Ventress said, pressing her tiny moment of advantage. "What happens if you win? Will you return to Coruscant in triumph? Will you sit at the great man's hand while the fighting is done? I don't think so. How can he let you live? Dooku, the conquering general. Dooku, the wealthy. Dooku, the wise. You stand too much in the sun, Count. You're bluffing about things you do not know, Asajj. It is a brave show, but it will not do." His attempt at a condescending smile didn't convince her. "He will use you up," she said. "He will put you on the front lines when he can. He will throw Yoda at you and his sycophants, Kenobi, Windu, Skywalker. With great ability comes great responsibility, Ventress. Not clearly one of your strong suits." Fine. Take your shots," she said impatiently. "You're just buying time now because I'm right. Ask yourself one question. Ask it from the dark side. Look at it clear-eyed, Count. Right now, your master uses you because he is beset by dangers. What happens when you're the most dangerous being left standing?" Through the comm channel, no sound but the faint static hiss of stars burning and burning. This is manipulation worthy of the Sith, and the most fascinating part about it is that, in this scene, Ventress is seeing something Dooku only figured out when it was too late. As we discussed in our character analysis of Dooku, he genuinely believed that when the fighting was done, he would be allowed to return to Coruscant in triumph and be the second in command of the Empire. Ventress, without even knowing the full picture, saw this, and she saw right through it as well. Because of this, she was able to save herself by playing on the vulnerabilities of Darth Tyrannus himself. Whatever traces of humility Asajj Ventress had left in her, she was nonetheless well on her way down the path of the Sith. But it should be noted that this wasn't really out of ideological commitment. We've already discussed how Ventress saw herself at heart, and the only reason Ventress aspired to the Sith was because Dooku was a Sith. Ventress had incredible loyalty to Dooku, and she had great respect for the man as well. She constantly tried to prove herself to him to earn his respect and appreciation, and she harbored jealousy for any of Dooku's other servants that she felt the Count respected more than her, such as General Grievous. Though Ventress was bold enough to suggest Dooku attempt to kill Darth Sidious, she never once even considered trying to kill Dooku and take his place as Sidious's apprentice. Part of this was because Ventress saw Dooku as her ticket to ever greater power, but it went much deeper than that. Ventress's extreme loyalty to Dooku was never overtly explained, but within the context of her backstory, it could be that she saw him as sort of a replacement for Kai Narek, a new master for her to idolize. Regardless of the cause, it was Ventress's loyalty to Dooku that pushed her further and further down the path of the dark side, for her descent was fueled by her hatred for the one she perceived as her biggest rival for Dooku's respect, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kenobi had been one of the Jedi Ventress had battled in her first mission for the Confederacy on Oma Dun, and she encountered him again on a number of subsequent missions, including on Kieta and Ord Cestus. Each time, Ventress failed to kill Kenobi, and he had repeatedly outmaneuvered her and foiled her missions, causing Ventress to lose favor with Dooku. Ventress hated Kenobi for this, but her hatred was greatly intensified by the fact that Dooku had a level of respect for him. Dooku, after all, had trained Kenobi's Jedi Master, Qui-Gon Jinn, and he viewed Kenobi as something like a grandson. He repeatedly expressed his desire to Darth Sidious to turn Kenobi to the dark side, though he knew that this was unlikely to ever happen. Even then, Dooku was somewhat reluctant about trying to kill Kenobi. Ventress was jealous of Dooku's respect for Kenobi, and as she saw it, it made Kenobi a rival for the Count's favor. As a result, Ventress developed a vendetta against Kenobi and repeatedly tried to kill, humiliate, or break him to demonstrate to Dooku that she was far more worthy of his respect. Many of these attempts backfired, increasing Ventress's hatred. During the Battle of Jabim, Ventress managed to capture Kenobi and bring him back to her castle on Rattatak, where she'd tortured him for weeks, hoping to break him to show his worthlessness to Dooku. But Kenobi escaped her dungeons, and on the way out, he not only stole Ventress's ship, but he stole Kai Narek's lightsaber as well. Ventress was livid, and she tried to repay him for these thefts on the Titavian 4, only to be outwitted by Kenobi once again. Utterly consumed by hatred, Ventress pursued Kenobi all the way to Coruscant, and while waiting for a chance to kill him, she ended up picking a fight with Anakin Skywalker. Though she gave Skywalker a nasty scar over his right eye in the battle, she ended up making a major misstep by threatening the life of Skywalker's secret love, Padme Amidala. That duel ended with Skywalker telekinetically wrapping Ventress up with severed power cables and dropping her into Coruscant's depths. In the original timeline, Asajj Ventress was presumed to be dead after this encounter, though the Clone Wars retconned her to be perfectly fine and back on the front lines in time for the Battle of Christosis, not long after this duel. Regardless, by late 20 BBY, Ventress was still believed dead, one way or another, but not by everyone. Obi-Wan Kenobi believed she was still alive. Indeed, he wanted her to be still alive. Ventress's rivalry with him wasn't two-sided, quite the contrary in fact. After learning of Ventress's origins during his time on Rattatak, Kenobi felt sorry for her and he wanted to try and redeem her. He believed that she was just a broken, deeply misguided person who was just in need of help and support, and he even became a little obsessed with saving her from herself. In late 20 BBY, as detailed in Star Wars Obsession, Kenobi set out to find Ventress, and he was ultimately successful. He tracked her to Boz Pity, where she was undergoing cybernetic reconstruction under Dooku's supervision. As Republic forces laid siege to Boz Pity, Kenobi infiltrated the Separatist Command Center where Ventress was being treated. The pity he felt for her ultimately awakened Ventress from her coma, and, as filled with hate as ever, she set out to kill Kenobi and prove herself to Count Dooku once and for all. Even as she tried to kill him, however, Kenobi insisted that a part of Ventress had not yet been corrupted. Kenobi seemed to be getting nowhere until the tide of battle turned decisively against the CIS, and Dooku decided to leave Ventress behind while he evacuated with General Grievous. Ventress broke off from the fight and attempted to catch up with him, but Dooku, musing that she had failed him at every turn, had one of his Magna Guards shoot her. This brought down Ventress's world. For the past 3 years, she'd been devoted to the Count, determined to prove herself to him and earn his respect. It was he that had pushed her further and further down the path of the dark side, and it was jealousy over his favor that fueled her vendetta with Kenobi. But now Dooku had betrayed her, and she was left without a master once again. After everything she'd done, she wound up back where she'd started. Ventress first blamed Kenobi for driving Dooku away, and she tried to kill him one last time, only to be cut down by Anakin, for real this time. As she lay dying, she was forced to accept that Dooku had betrayed her, and that Kenobi, of all people, cared about her more than her master ever had. And as Ventress accepted this, something strange happened. This last revelation wasn't nearly enough to get Ventress to renounce the dark side, but it was enough to get her to understand what Kenobi had seen in her, that part of her character had not yet been corrupted. Thus, while she didn't really repent or seek redemption, she did use her last words to bury the hatchet with Kenobi and to give him a warning about Dooku's plans. To quote from Obsession issue 5, "Watch the center of the galaxy. It's the key to victory. Defend Coruscant from Dooku." Kenobi replied that he was sure that Ventress was going to use her last breath to curse him, to which she responded, "Perhaps I have, or perhaps I just hate Dooku more than I hate you, or maybe you were right about me all along." As a last gesture of kindness, Obi-Wan had Ventress's body sent to Coruscant for a proper burial, believing that since she'd spent her whole life at war, she shouldn't have to be buried on a battlefield as well. Ventress was believed dead, of course, but 2 days later, aboard the medical frigate Bright Flight, she awoke and hijacked the ship. To the surprise of the frigate's crew, however, she didn't kill them. Her only demand was that they change course. When they asked where they were going, her response was the following: "Just far away, far from the Jedi, from this war, from Count Dooku, just fly as far away as you can." The pilots complied, and in Legends, at least, Asajj Ventress was never seen again. It would be going a bit too far to say that Ventress redeemed herself in the end. She didn't renounce the dark side, she simply renounced Count Dooku, and she gave up her goal of revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's a big step, to be sure, but it isn't enough to say that she had a major change of conscience. What is clear, however, is that Asajj Ventress was saved from completely succumbing to the dark side. She was able to keep that uncorrupted part of her intact, the part that saw herself as a Jedi fighting for some measure of justice in a cruel and uncaring world, and that does make a difference. Asajj Ventress wasn't a Jedi, but she wasn't a Sith either. Corrupted as she was, there was still good in her, and in time, it's possible that she might have been able to nurture it, and she couldn't avoid the fact that it was the Jedi who had given her the chance to do so. Just as one Jedi so long ago had also given her the chance to become something greater. The Jedi may well have failed Asajj Ventress, but in the end, they saved her as well. So that's our look at the character of Asajj Ventress, as depicted in the original Clone Wars multimedia project. Star Wars The Clone Wars muddled the ending a bit there, but even in the Clone Wars' version of the storyline, a lot of Ventress's character ended up the same in an abstract sense. But what do you think? Are there any other fallen Jedi you'd like us to make videos on? Let us know all that and more in the comment section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.